You're not getting any younger, so
do it now or forever wish you had.
Hey you! Yes, you! Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week, I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Hey you. Yes, you. What do you adore about yourself? Do you make it known? Do you scream it at the top of your lungs? Today's episode exists to help you stand tall, strong, and find pride in exactly who you are, even if there are things about yourself that you don't really like. There are things about me that I don't like. I have acne scars all over my face, and sometimes I say the very wrong thing at the very wrong moments, and oftentimes I just feel this incredible sense that I don't belong when I'm in a moment that I know I do belong in. Jen Oleniczak is a chronic connector and collaborator. She started The Engaging Educator in 2012 and Fearless Winston-Salem May of this year. She loves more than anything connecting great people with great ideas. On today's episode, she talks about the power of reflection, being in the moment, and using the good old improv trick called yes and to make you more collaborative and to help you brainstorm your most powerful ideas. I hope you enjoy this episode. And as always, if you do, make sure to subscribe and rate and review in iTunes. Plus, come hang out with us in the You're Not Getting Any Younger secret Facebook group. I hope to see you there. I really think a big thing that you stand for and all of your work stands for is helping people, especially women, understand, believe, and stand up for really who they are. And even if that means they're weird, they're different, they're not even sure of who they are. And I think that work in general is just so powerful for people. So I have a question for you, Jen. What are some things that you adore about yourself?
That is something that if you would have asked me that question a few years ago, I would have deflected and said, oh, well, I don't know, I'm just me, and like the usual response that I think a lot of women pull into. And I realized in the last few years that if I'm teaching women how to embrace themselves as this awesome supernova being, I have to embrace myself and really know what I love about myself. And I adore the fact that I can talk to literally anyone and think of a person to introduce them to that will be a good collaboration and connection. Like I am living and breathing that so often that I'm talking to a woman, and if I can't necessarily help them, I'm like, hey, let me connect you to this person over here. So my mental Rolodex is one of those things that I'm like, I'm really proud of myself for this right now because I truly love connecting people with other people and cool ideas.
Which is really cool because I have a feeling that's your superpower, because it's a lot of what you also stand for with your business is connecting and making sure people find ways to collaborate. So how did you sit down and say, okay, here's how I'm going to figure out what are the things that I love about myself and that I could use for a greater purpose? What did you do?
I took a big, strong look at what I didn't like first because, I mean, I was an actor for a really long time. I performed comedy, and then I went back to school for art history and was an art historian and a museum educator. And I feel like I've had dozens of careers for being 36. And I realized that none of them really clicked and made, like, I was good. I was fine. I had fun, but it didn't make my heart sing. So looking at those things and saying, wow, I'm good at this. I'm good at teaching. I'm good at educating people about Picasso and like crazy art sculptures, but I'm not myself and I'm not as happy as I could be. And I really like making people like find their confidence and use their voice and seeing the good in themselves. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, in all of these jobs and everything that I've done, like in directing, in teaching, in working with students, it was always helping people understand themselves more, was always like that through line thread. Even during improv, of like being on a team off Broadway in a ridiculous situations. And it was the conversations that I would have after with some of the people on the team, and the conversations I would make in the friendships of like, hey, well, you should try doing this, or let's try doing this. Then I realized, I'm like, hey, this is what I can do. Like, I can help people in all of these different ways, whether it be through their voice, through their speaking, through helping them believe that they can teach a class about plants, even if they don't know more about plants than what they know, like seeing their own superpowers.
It's so interesting because I feel like rarely in our lives do we do a self-evaluation like that unless we start to see, okay, I'm sort of unhappy with my life, or I'm doing a lot of this work and it's just not what I want to be doing. So when do you think it is a good time for a person to sort of do that evaluation to see what their superpowers are and how they can use that to eventually start their own business too?
I think all day, every day, even if you think you found it already, like there's no right time. I tell people constantly, like, you need to reflect, because even if you're doing that thing that is your superpower, that is that amazing thing that you love, if you feel like it's turning into work, and not in the, like, running a business is work. Let's be honest. No one really sees the non-glamorous side enough. But if it becomes that kind of work that kind of kills your soul inside and hurts who you are, then you have to step back and say, okay, what's going on here? Like, what am I doing? What's going on in my life? What do I want to be doing? And so often I find with women that question, like, what do you want, is such a difficult one to get an answer. Like we get, oh, well, I want to be happy. Okay, what does that mean? Or, oh, I want a life that I don't have to worry about bills. Okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're like going out to dinner every single night? Or does that mean like, hey, you're cooking for yourself, or you have a savings, or you can go on these huge vacations, or you can just exist? Like, defining those is something that's really difficult. So I think constant reflection and just like taking a step back from yourself is the best way not to burn out, and the best way to keep evaluating what your superpower, to use your words, what that is, and how you can best use it so it continues to feel like a superpower.
I agree. And I think because we all live such busy, complicated lives, we have to press that pause button more often, because if not, then somebody asks us the question of, what do you want? And we say, what? I don't know. I never thought about myself. And I think that's such an amazing way of putting it. With confidence comes having to understand the things about yourself that you don't like or you're self-conscious about. And as somebody like yourself who has been on stage for many, many years, how are you able to take the things that you personally felt self-conscious about, you felt vulnerable about, and get over them when you were in front of in the public?
I think the biggest thing when people find out about, when people talk about me and they know, or talk to me and they know that I was on stage at one point and I no longer am on stage, they're like, you can't possibly be an introvert. Like, you can't possibly get nervous before things. And when I was on stage, I was someone else. So I was never myself on stage. It was always playing a part or playing a character or playing like a version of myself when I was doing improv. So when I started speaking professionally and teaching, I realized that there was a lot of anxiety and insecurity around me and who I was that I had to get over. The idea that I get really fired up and I get really excited. And in the past, directors have commented, they're like, oh, you have a Muppet face. Ooh. And that idea that, literally one director said to me, in some lights, you look really, really pretty, and then you smile and you look like a totally different person.
Stop it. What
No,
did
I'm
you
serious.
say to that? Oh my
At
God.
the time, I was very like, I was heartbroken. So I learned how to smile in a specific way. So that like contortion that he was talking about, those lines around my eyes and that big, huge grin wouldn't happen. And that affected me for years. And now I'm just like, I smile and I don't care because I'm happy.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was being like this version of what people wanted to see, or what I thought people wanted to see. And that's like that step back, that reflection of like, what do I want to see? Like, what makes me me? And it's the fact that I smile without any guard. The fact that I'm not like uber concerned about too fat, too skinny, too this, too that. It's like, no, I feel good. Like I feel good about myself, and I feel comfortable in my skin at 36, not at 26, not at 19. At 36, I finally know what feels good to me and what doesn't.
Yeah, and I think all of us go through that. I think especially as women, people are always criticizing us, especially if we want to do something more in the public eye. You know, I've had bosses tell me that I sound like my voice, I sound like I'm a kindergartner, and I've had people tell me, "Oh, you know, you really need to wear makeup and cover your acne scars because it's not so pretty in person." And I think when you are at a certain point in your life, you believe those people and you do change, and then you find yourself in public being a person you're not, and I think you get sick of that. So what advice would you give somebody who is scared of parts of themselves and who they are to be more themselves and just own it?
One of my very best friends had this on a Post-it on her desk. And I have taken this, and knowing your love for pizza, you're going to love this quote. You're not pizza. Not everyone is going to like you.
Oh my God, I love it. I mean, I wish I was pizza, but yeah, of course.
Right? But think about that. Like really, everyone loves some kind of pizza.
Yep.
There's a few people who like also hate happiness and kittens and like things like that. But the sooner you understand that you will never please everyone, and the sooner you accept that some people, no matter what you do, they will not like you. And that is okay. That is perfectly fine, because you aren't pizza. No matter how hard you try, you can never be pizza. And that's all right, because pizza is pizza.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think that, you know, one of the things that personally helped me get over that and find what I loved about myself and own it was doing improv. When I started doing improv years ago, first of all, it was the scariest thing I'd ever done at first, because you are going out there, you're playing games, you're being silly, but truthfully, you're having a conversation with yourself that says, let go of caring about what other people think about you and just have fun. And in 2012, you started the company Engaging Educators. So that's a company I want to be in full disclosure about. I do teach classes for. I love everything about it, and I especially love why you started it. So I want you to tell our listeners what drove you to become an entrepreneur, and also what the Engaging Educator is.
Yeah, so like you were saying, in 2012, I was like, this is probably my big pivotal moment. I was working at a museum. I was working at the Guggenheim, actually, and they jokingly called me the show pony there, because they would like trot me out when funders would come in, because I didn't care. I was like, whatever, like I care about these kids or this group. Like, I don't care who's watching me. It doesn't matter. I've thrown myself on the ground in front of an audience of paying people when I was an actor and an improviser. Like, please. This is not anything hard. And I realized in that moment, I was like, I'm not this kind of person in real life. Like, I prefer to be at home. I prefer to be quiet. I'm definitely a closeted introvert, but I know how to turn it on, and I know how to listen, and I know how to be present because of so much of my improv background. Like, I trained at Second City. I had been, when I stopped performing, it was about 10 years off Broadway with a troupe. And I started doing classes for museum educators, just like as a side hustle. Because I was like, oh, well, I could do this. Like, I'll just run a class at one of the audition studios in town. I'll rent space like you would for an audition, and I'll charge people, and it'll be awesome. And my very first class sold out in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
So I added a class, and that one sold out. So on the same day, I was teaching 2 classes, like on a Saturday in the middle of the day, and they both sold out. And I learned very, very quickly, because that was my first mistake in entrepreneurship too, which is really exciting. Like, people will always sign up for stuff. If they're not paying for it, oftentimes they will not show up for stuff. So I just had them RSVP, and I was like, oh, you can pay at the door, whatever. And I learned very quickly that, like, when we had 2 half full classes, that I was like, oh, okay, well, now I charge up front. And day 1, here's my lesson.
Yep.
And from there, I just kept offering classes and kept saying, oh, okay, well, people want to learn how to be flexible and be in the moment and to be, like, not ruffled by some craziness going on at their work, at their office, when they're talking to someone, and they want to learn how to listen and be present, like even on a date. Oh, I just remember dating in New York, and I'm married now, and I met my husband not on a date. I met him on a business trip.
Even better.
Even better. And just the lack of listening skills that people have nowadays. So going from like museum educators to teaching corporate and professionals, and it's funny because people, when they hear about EE, they're like, oh, well, there's tons of improv theaters in New York. Like, how are you getting work? And I said, but we're the only one that doesn't have a theater. Like, we're just working with people in offices. Like, we don't work with people that want to be actors. And that's what we've always done. So that's how we got recognized. And it was like what I tell new entrepreneurs, because I coach small businesses all the time and people with these great ideas. And they're like, oh, like, what is that secret sauce? Like, how can I figure out what to do? And you're doing it. You're doing what you love. And I always tell people, like, start sustainable. Like, do the free stuff. Do as much free marketing. Like, grow slowly. Take the jump and do it, but grow slowly. Like, don't put yourself in debt.
Yep.
Do what you can.
Yeah, and just get started too. I think that's a lot of what holds people back is there's so much in their head. There's so much thinking, what if? Like, what if this doesn't work? One of the crazy things that improv teaches you, right, is that you should make mistakes. You should fail, and you should recover. Why is improv good for that?
It's because you're constantly failing, I think. Like, in that sense of when you're going out. So when you're thinking of improv, when people think of it, they either think of 2 things. They think of, like, whose line is it anyways? Yep. So that old TV show that some people are like, I've never heard of that, and I immediately feel super old. And then, or they think of, like, stand up. And in truth, improv is neither. It's listening and responding. Like, a lot of times there's games and gimmicks that get put on top of it. But a normal conversation is improv because you have no idea what that person is going to ask you. You probably haven't prepared answers ahead of time. You know who you are. You know where you are. You might know the purpose of the conversation. So there's certain parameters that are already set up. But you truly just have to listen and respond. And sometimes you don't say the best thing. You say something that absolutely is the wrong thing to say at the wrong time. You shove your foot in your mouth. And while that's reality, if you think of improv, and what I say to people, improv, when you're actually practicing it, is reality on steroids. So everything is like life or death. It is that big moment. So you have a conversation with someone about whether or not you should get coffee in real life. In improv, that coffee is like everything. The life changes if you go to get coffee. And how is that life going to change? So you raise the stakes of real life and you learn to exist on this different plane. So if you're raising the stakes of real life, there's not going to be this fuzzy gray area that exists in real life. It is black or white. It is fail or succeed. There's no, oh, well, maybe that didn't go as well as it could. So that waffling that we tend to do on decision making, you can't do that in improv. So that encouragement to like, just do something, just do something. And if you fail, at least you did something and you're not sitting in this awkward balancing act on the fence. And improv lets you practice failing because you get into this weird situation where the coffee is life or death. And guess what? When you're done with it, it really wasn't life or death. It was all play and make believe. And you still get the same reaction of nervousness and freaking out and like, oh my God, I can't do this. I don't want to make a mistake.
You know, I think that's why I'm the biggest proponent of improv for every single person, because when I tell people, try improv, it will change your life. They say to me, what? I don't want to do that. You just play silly games, make a fool of yourself. And I'm like, no, everything you learn in improv transfers into real life skills. So everything you just said, I mean, even playing a scene about the coffee, how does that translate into how a person will change the way they live their life personally and professionally?
Again, that's that reflection that I was talking about. Like I am probably the biggest proponent of reflection. I was just coaching someone this morning and she's like, okay, what's my homework? Cause I always give homework. And I said, I need you to like have conversations and then step back from the conversation and go, okay, how did this go? Was it good? Was it bad? What happened? And that's the same thing with improv. If you find yourself in an improv scene or a conversation and you realize that you didn't get what you wanted, or you were tripping over your words, or you were getting all this anxiety, then you ask that question, well, why was I getting anxiety? Is it because you actually had to take initiative and make a decision? So maybe you don't like doing that. You're more of a passenger in the game of life. Is it because the person wasn't listening to you? Okay, well, if the person's not listening to you, were you clear or were they just not listening? So that reflection after everything, the kind of so what, like you just did the so what, like how does that connect, is so clear once you take that step back. Like even this conversation, it's like we started out and I saw the Skype request and I was like, oh, I've had another podcast that wanted me to be on camera. So I'm going to like turn on my camera. I'm going to fix my hair, like, ba-ba-da. And looking back, I'm like, well, of course it's not on camera because it's a podcast.
Yeah.
But we have these like ideas in our heads that exist that we don't spend a lot of time examining. And if you don't reflect on why you think the way you think, you don't grow. And that in lies like how you can fix things with improv, because you get that chance of like playing again as an adult and going, okay, what happened? There's no consequence to me taking initiative this time. There's no consequence to me being more direct.
It's one of the only ways I feel like a person can practice this. I mean, in our real life, we are so buttoned up, scared to take chances, scared to make mistakes, scared to fail. I think another big thing we're also all trying so eagerly and hard to do is be in the moment. We all live in a world where we're constantly being pulled away. Just like you said, dating in New York City, that's the worst. I mean, I went on dates where I sat across from a person who was on their phone for 45% of the time, and it was, why are we even here? What kind of techniques or tips do you have for people who are striving to live their life more in the moment?
I think the first thing to add, like I'm going to sound like a broken record, like think about why you're not living in the moment. Like what's going on? Yeah. Like in those moments, like what's up? Like, are you overthinking? Are you thinking of what to say next? Are you thinking of what happened yesterday? Are you thinking of what's going to happen tomorrow? Like, are you worried about things that haven't happened yet? My grandma always used to say, don't borrow sorrow from tomorrow.
Love it.
And as someone who suffers from like a lot of anxiety and like just is getting over serious depression and all sorts of things, like when you look at your life and it's not where you want it to be, that question of like, well, why am I not living in the moment? And that answer might be like, oh, well, it's because I'm X, or it's because I'm so concerned about this thing that happened 3 years ago and I think it's going to happen again. Okay, well, like you have to stop worrying about that thing that happened 3 years ago in order, or deal with it, or find a way to get past it. Like there's no secret sauce to living in the moment. And I think people look for that a lot of times when they take classes with EE or meet me for coaching. And I'm like, it starts with looking at yourself. and digging in. And it's really hard when you start looking at yourself, because I had one woman a couple weeks ago in a class I was teaching saying, right now, this cut too deep, because I kept asking that why and why and why. And she goes, I went into a place of something that I thought I was over, and I'm not. So I'm going to wait, and I'll come back in like a month.
Wow.
And it's like you have to examine what's up, because not everyone's going to be able to like live by the seat of their pants or constantly be in the moment. I have to remind myself, like, hey, stop thinking about this and be present, Jen. It's a choice.
Yeah, and I think it's something we all struggle with, and you're right. And I never really thought about it. Like, I'm thinking right now, what takes me out of the moment? And I think it's just this greater sense of, I have to keep doing X, Y, and Z to be more successful, to make more money,
Mm-hmm.
and if that's always on my mind, even if I'm out to lunch with the person, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I got to check my email, I got to call this person, and I'm being a bad friend, or I'm being a bad girlfriend, or I'm just being not the best version of Jen I could be because of these things. So you're right. I mean, I know you keep saying reflection, but I think it's so important, because we just don't do it, and it can completely just affect who we are. Another major thing in improv, which improv is very well known for, is yes and. Can you talk a little bit about the power of yes and how that can translate also into personal and professional relationships and situations?
Oh, goodness. I have yes and tattooed on my wrist.
Do you really?
I do, in my husband's handwriting.
Stop.
And it's like, no, I'm serious. Like, people don't believe me, and they're like, photos, or it didn't happen. And it looks so good because it's his handwriting, and that's what was tattooed. And people are like, you just drew that. I actually had a kid lick her hand and try to rub it off.
No way.
So, no, it was so gross. It was so gross.
Were you like, I have seen it all, but this is new for me?
I immediately ran to the bathroom, and like a germaphobe Jen was like, yes. Oh my gosh, get off. Like, this is like licking spit on my arm right now.
God.
So clearly I believe in yes and enough to tattoo it on my body, and in a very exposed place like my wrist. It's a game changer for so many ways, and to be as concise as possible about it. If you live with a yes and attitude, in the sense of, yes, you're accepting reality, and here's what you're going to do about it. Yes, you're taking in what's going on around you, and you're adding to it. That is going to change everything. Because if you disagree with someone and they're like, oh, the sky is green today, you can say, yes, you think the sky is green today, and I believe it's blue. Right there, you've diffused an argument with someone, because if you start using that word but, it stops any sort of creativity, it stops any ideation, it creates conflict. The word and is quite literally an equal sign in the English language. The word but pits two things against one another. It elevates one above another. So our alternative a lot of times is to say, well, yeah, but this. Yeah, but that. So that idea of, you don't have to agree with everything. I'm not saying you become Mary Sunshine and someone's like, hey, go jump off that bridge. And you're like, yes, and. It's that, yes, you're asking me to jump off the bridge, and I have a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
As opposed to fighting with someone, which we all know that fights just end up in this like circular nonsense. And then with the idea of ideation and coming up with an idea for a business, a vacation, a relationship, like say someone wants to come up with a new cupcake. And instead of going, but everyone's done it, let yourself go down the rabbit hole of yes and, in the sense of yes and it won't have gritty frosting. Yes and it can be in any flavor. Yes and those flavors aren't going to taste fake. Yes and they're going to be bright colors. So you can get as crazy as you want, and then you actually get a lot of really good ideas out of using it. So you're removing that failure that we all worry about. And even though improv teaches you to fail, like we still all worry about it. It doesn't matter. And you can brainstorm in truly the best ways. So yes and is like, it is a way of life. It is not, I cannot say this enough. It is not agreeing with everything. It's not saying yes to everything in the sense of like, I'm going to do everything that's offered for me. Well, you also need to take care of your health and your well-being and not burn out. It's acknowledging the situation and accepting the reality and seeing what you can add to it versus fighting it.
I'm literally sitting here semi-freaking out because the fact that you just used it in that brainstorming way completely opened up my mind to a brand new way of using yes and. I never thought of it like that, especially when someone rejects you. No, Jen, you can't do this. Okay, yes, and I'm going to do it differently the next time like this. You know, it's like a great way of sort of rebounding too, and I never really thought about it like that.
And that's why it's tattooed on my wrist, because so often it's like people are like, oh, the year of I love the year of yes. So don't get me wrong. I read that book, Shonda Rhimes, loved it. I think it's really important. Again, if you find out during reflection that you make a lot of excuses for yourself, like just jump in and say yes to some things. Fantastic. It really is about like, okay, this is reality. Yes, this happened. Yes, you think this.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this. And here's what's next. Here's what I'm going to add to the situation.
It's true. And even when, like, just like you said, when bad things happen in your life, yeah, this happened, but I'm going to go cry about it. Or, but I can't believe this happened to me. Or, yes, this happened and I'm going to be proactive in this way. I think that is so, so, so powerful. And I'm glad you mentioned it in a brainstorming way because I never thought of it like that. So thank you for that free coaching tip, Jen. I love it.
You're very welcome.
I have to say, I read this and I loved this. After 2016, everything with the election, you decided rather than getting mad at the state of the world and what was happening, especially with women, you wanted to get even. So what did you do in that year to pivot your business to focus more on women?
Yeah, so to all transparency, I got mad for a little while because I firmly believe that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, like, I agree with that too.
You need to feel it, you need to live it, you need to take time off. Like being active in society requires you to give so much energy. So I was unnecessarily maybe mad at even my husband that night. Like he did nothing. And the night of the election, I was like, rah, about everything. And funny, I feel that way today because of all the stuff that's going on right now with the Supreme Court and this just garbage situation, this dumpster fire that just keeps getting more. And I decided that I'm not, I didn't decide this. I know this. I'm not a marcher. I'm not a protester, and I know that about myself. I get a lot of social anxiety and crowded spaces, and it's just not, like, I've never thought I was doing enough for things like that. So instead, I was like, well, you know, our classes are 80% women for EE and like 20% dudes, and I don't think it would be a bad choice to do this. And I kind of waffled, honestly, for a while up until the night of the election. And when that happened, when Hillary officially conceded and Trump trumped whatever he did, whatever, I said, I don't care if I lose business. I don't care if people are upset with me. I'm going to start focusing in on that 80%. Yeah. And that's just how it is. It's my business and I've gone through it. So I'm going to do it. And I was very like the amount of people that were saying like, oh, you're going to lose business. You're going to lose money. Like da, 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 da. I was like, you know what? I don't care. Cause if I go through all the stress to run a business and if I don't get to do what I want to do, why am I running a business? I could just work for someone else. And I took the leap. I was like, all right, we're going to focus in on women. We're going to go women-centric. We're still going to do co-ed workshops when people hire us to do it, but the public offerings are going to be women-centric. And we're going to teach women to talk about their accomplishments and be proud of it and like be unhumble is one of them. We're going to teach women to be comfortable with the style of leader they are and not lead like a man, lead like themselves. and get out of those small talk and networking situations in a way that like what you want to get out of it. And I started coaching women, progressive women, I still do, that are running for office. And I know that for me, like people joke and they're like, oh, you should run for office and make a difference. I was like, no, that's not me. I know where I can help and help elevate women and make women aware of the power they hold and feel comfortable being quirky or silly or fun and also know how to turn it on when they have to. I think one of the things that I tell women, I said, you should smile more. And they kind of look at me with that whole like crazy, like, what? And I'm like, no, not for the, oh, you look so pretty when you smile. It changes your cadence when you smile. So you get your audience back. So if you throw a smile in, they're going to hear your voice change. It moves. And by moving it, it's the same principle behind white noise. You don't hear white noise after a while. We speak with cadences that are all the same. So if you smile, you've changed something and someone's brain snaps back into focus. And they're like, don't you feel weird telling people to smile more? And I said, no, because it's calculated. Like,
yeah, it's true.
Like you take advantage of what you can in that sense. And there's nothing wrong with stacking the deck in your favor as much as possible. Look, you don't have some idiot saying, oh, you should smile more. You're doing it. Not because they asked you to, because it literally causes them to pay more attention to you because your cadence has changed.
It's true. I love that trick. And one of the things I do when I have really difficult phone calls to make, or I find myself on a phone call with someone trying to argue with me, is I smile when I speak, and it completely changes the tone of my voice. It also resets my mood from being extremely aggressive to being assertive, but doing it in a more calm, less emotional way. And I think that that's an amazing trick, even in person as well. Your classes are packed because I think it's one of the only places that women can go to work through imposter syndrome and work on how to get the most out of conversations and also work on how to be unhumble and proud of the things that they do. And I went through that where I started just going through a phase in my life where I was just so depressed and I had no self-confidence. I couldn't even go to social situations because I felt like, honestly, I felt like shit. And one of the things I, no joke, started doing is I wrote down a list of like 10 things I'm proud of, 10 things I've accomplished, and I carried it with me. And before I walked into those social situations, I just read it through to remind myself of A, what other people probably see in me, and B, that I have worth, I have value. I'm wondering if you have another trick like that for people who are feeling down about themselves or shy about their accomplishments. You know, what are some things that they can do to beat that imposter syndrome and lead with their best selves?
I think what I tell people that because I tell people that trick constantly, I'm like, write it down. I tell them to think as quantitatively as possible, because what ends up happening with some people, they think that it's not a big deal. They think, oh, it's just this thing that I did. And it's like, remove those qualifiers of it's not a big deal or it's just this thing. Like, what's the thing that you did? You made this much in sales. You got up this morning. You like remove all qualifiers in the sense, oh, it's just this, or, oh, here's a big thing that I did. And just look at it as like data, like right in front of you. Like say, okay, well, I did this much at work today. And that's something that it's okay to be proud of. Yeah. I think pride is something that we don't experience or express nearly enough. I told someone the other day, I said, I'm really proud of you for this. And she kind of looked at me and I was like, what? And she said, I don't remember the last time anyone told me that they're proud of me. And I encourage people that if you're not ready to feel proud of yourself, like tell someone else that you're proud of them and see what it does to them. And then, and don't bullshit them, clearly. Like really say that you like something they did that you're proud of. And then look at what it did to them and think of why you don't treat yourself in that same way.
Yeah, you know, it's so true. And also, one of the things I've had to start doing, and I've had to force myself to do this, is when somebody says to me, Jen, I'm so proud of you for X, Y, and Z. I force myself to say thank you rather than, oh, please, it was nothing. Like, it was no big deal. And that has been like very hard to do. Do you feel like people have like struggle accepting compliments as well?
Oh yes, we all feel, and that's why the class on humble
Yes.
exists,
Yeah.
because we feel like we're going to be this like cocky creature
Yep.
and this overly confident creature, and it's like there's a difference between, and people say like, well, I don't want to be cocky. Well, okay, well, you're cocky if you don't care about anyone else and you only care about yourself. And that changes people. I'm like, are you proud of someone else when they do something? Well, yeah, of course I am. Okay, so be proud of yourself. Like, if it's just about you, then you're cocky. If you are also proud about other people, like, just say thank you. Say thank you. Don't say it's just this or no big deal. That is one of the hardest things that changed, to say thank you. I was talking to someone about my company when I moved down to North Carolina, because I divide my time between too many cities, not as many as you, the way I see it.
Well, I'm a little radical, but you travel a ton too, which is crazy.
Yeah, I bop around. And I was talking to a woman who I really respected and I wanted to work with about EE. And I said, well, I don't know how it got so popular. And I'm not really sure. I mean, I was just an actor and I didn't like acting. And I was like crapping on my own business when I was introducing it. And I did it constantly because I personally was afraid. And she read me the riot act in not a way that it was like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this. She said, well, your business doesn't sound interesting and it doesn't sound like anything different. And what are you really doing that is successful? Because I can't work with someone that's doing what everyone else is doing. And I remember leaving that meeting and I like cried the entire night. And I was like, what am I doing to myself? Like, I am doing this to myself.
Yeah, what a great slap in the face. Seriously, because
Oh.
I do the same thing. Like when someone asks me like how's bridesmaid for hire or how's it feel to travel every month? I'm like, "Whoa, it sucks." Or like I lead with the bad because I feel like that's relatable and that's going to make me not feel like I'm acting better than that person. But even just a simple I just start saying thank you and I stop talking, or I say thank you and I say, oh, and here's something like new that I've done, and not in a bragging way, but in a, hey, you complimented me and I'm not gonna make you feel bad for doing that. And let me tell you, it is so hard to say just thank you because all you want to do is go negative.
And that's the thing. Like, when you even said it like in a bragging way. What does it mean?
Right.
Like, isn't bragging, like, isn't that how someone else interprets something versus how you interpret it?
Right.
Like,
you can't even control it. You can't control it how they're gonna interpret it. If they're gonna think you're bragging, it's probably because things in their life might be not going as planned or something that they're feeling. You can't fix that.
Exactly. And you can't change someone.
Right.
And that, like, that understanding that, like, someone seeing you as bragging, well, look what you just said. Someone else sees that. Like, someone else is making that assumption for you. And years past, because this happened a few years ago, and I saw this woman at a social event, and now I've opened another business, and I'm in a smaller town, so people are like, oh my gosh, da 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 da, Jen, you're doing such amazing things. And I came up to her and I thanked her. And she didn't remember the situation. I said, I really want to thank you for making me feel awful.
Yeah.
Because I stopped talking about it. And she's like, I never did anything like that. And I was like, oh, no, you did. You did.
I cried because of you. You did.
Yeah. And I said, I'm not mad at you. I want to say thank you because it made me change how I was talking. And she just kind of smiled and walked away. And then I found out she was like a director, like a film director in LA for years, which made me realize, I was like, oh, that's why she speaks like that. Because that's what directors do. Right? They make people feel terrible.
Oh, man. But you know what? Like, I feel like that one interaction probably gave you the energy, the courage, just everything to just keep going forward and working harder. And it probably benefited you in so many ways,
Absolutely. Oh, it was so good to have that moment happen because I feel like that was a big turn for me. And I hope that other people don't have to go through like a night of sobbing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I hope they do, because that was the slap, like you said, that was the slap in the face that I needed.
Yeah.
I was really, really good at helping other people see how awesome they were, and not so good at helping myself see how awesome I was.
Yep, I'm the same way. I need rejection. I need negative feedback for me to get jump started. And it's like a sick mental thing, but also, you know what? Like, that's just what works for us. But
I don't think it is. Like, I see you talk about it. I don't think you have a sick mental thing with it. I think you see it and you're like, all right, I'm going to keep going until I get what I'm looking for.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things I love about you, is that you just keep pushing.
Thank you. You know, and I think the last thing I really want to talk to you about, because I don't want to keep you forever, but your new project, Fearless. Talk about what made you want to go from having a business that's mostly online, having classes all around the country in physical locations, to now having your own physical location called Fearless, where people come and they do workshops and classes. What brought you to start Fearless?
Oh man, so there's the logistical part that made me start Fearless, and then there's the heart part. I actually, like, it started because of EE, and I sold some of my curriculum to a leadership organization that does leadership training all around the world. So, like, where there's no computers, they're teaching it in the sand with sticks, basically, and that's what they've told me. They're in such remote areas, and they're in also like San Diego and New York. And they were coming up with a product where it was like incorporating improv into leadership. And the product finally came out, and it's to purchase. So it's like a set of improv activities to create a better leadership environment. So you don't need anything aside from yourself to do this, and maybe a small group for some activities. So when you sell something that is pretty proprietary, you get a very large check. And so I got a very large check from that, and it was all my work. And so I was like, okay, well, I can be responsible, and I can, like, I don't know, squirrel it away for a rainy day, or I can take the uplifting women part of EE, the part that, like, made my heart so happy when women, after taking improv together, would go get a drink or be friends or get dinner or hang out because they shared this vulnerable experience together. I could take that and I could create a space where that can happen all the time. So I looked at, I called a number that I saw on a building. Like, this is literally how it started. I do not recommend starting a business like this. I called a number. I saw this space that had been vacant for 2 years. Wow. And I was like, there's so much light, and it's this huge room. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I asked them to fix some things, and I signed a lease. And I didn't even have a name, Jen. I was like, I don't know what this is the space, though. I just felt it. And it was open and big. And then I took my time, because I had this, like, this huge check that was allowing me to take my time to do what I wanted to do. And in the meantime, I had gone out to coffee with some friends, and one friend had just left her job, and we're sitting in the croissant place, and she's sobbing. And another friend, her husband was being a jerk, and, like, not a jerk, more than a jerk. He, like, went to New Orleans with this 20-year-old that is in the office, right? So terrible stuff. And we're discussing this terrible stuff in public places. And I'm like, how many times in New York have I cried on the subway?
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
Or in a coffee shop.
Amen.
Or in a highly public place.
Really, like everywhere but in a private place, yeah.
Right. And I was like, well, what if it was also like a clubhouse?
Yes.
And it had classes that you could be vulnerable, and it also had a place where women can work and get to know one another. And all that fear was taken out. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. Yeah. It was such an organic way to, like, get where I am now. And now it's exactly what it is. Like, I'm sitting in another space, in the space, and there's women having a meeting. There's women working. We're having a meetup for women that went through sexual assault. Wow. We're also having a kombucha class. We're also having a makeup class. And it's that idea that it doesn't matter what kind of woman you are. Like, you are amazing. And there are people that are with you on this. And in a very short amount of time, we've over 2,300 members. And for a small town like Winston-Salem to have 2,300 people being like, yes, I want this. I need this. Like, I want to be able to go into a space and cry if I need to. And I sage the space all the time. I teach improv here. But it's really the goal of EE now is to help women use their voice. And here it's a stage that you can use your voice because women from the community teach the classes and run the programs. And I'm just here as the host. And it's not it's just me. It's no, that's my, I take being a host very seriously. There's a lot of plants, there's couches, there's good snacks and coffee. That's my job. And that's what I do really well here. And the women share skills and knowledge.
I absolutely love everything about the space and truly everything about you. We've never met in person, but I feel like we have and we will, and I'm going to grab onto you as my best friend because I think that you're so incredible and what you're doing for women, and I see it in person when I teach classes for you, is just absolutely incredible and inspiring. And I just want to say thank you for existing and thank you for doing every single thing that you do, Jen. It's truly amazing. And I want to ask you one final question before this interview ends. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Fill in the blank. You're not getting any younger, so
do it now or forever wish you had.
I love it, Jen. Please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you, your classes, Fearless, your book, everything. Where can they find out more?
Absolutely. So I am real social. So you can follow me on Twitter at Jen Oleniczak, which will be very hard to find. So if you look up The Engaging Educator or Fearless Winston-Salem, we have really good search engine optimization. So you just have to enter those terms in, and you're going to find a plethora of videos, articles, websites, Facebook groups. Even if you're not in Winston-Salem and you want a safe community of women to just be around, join our Facebook group for Fearless Winston-Salem because it is better than Google. I found a hair recommendation plus an eyebrow recommendation in about 5 minutes because of how powerful the women are there. And it feels good to have a safe space on the internet. So look up The Engaging Educator or Fearless Winston-Salem and you will find me. And please feel free to say hi. I really like chatting with people. I am a closet introvert. When it's one-on-one, super happy.
I love it. And we will link to all of this on anyyounger.com and also in our Facebook group. Jen, thank you so much again. You are awesome.
Thank you, Jen.
Oh. Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.